Now, troubling news for our monarch. King Charles will not feature on Australia's new $5 note, according to the country's central bank. The new design will pay tribute to the culture and history of indigenous Australians. A portrait of the late Queen Elizabeth does appear on the current design of the $5 note. So, is King Charles losing his grip on the Commonwealth? Is this his first major setback? And is it the first proof that Charles simply doesn't have the pulling power and the Midas touch or the appeal of his late great mother, Elizabeth? Is King Charles inevitably going to preside over a monarchy in decline? Well, to discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome Ingrid Seward, royal biographer and editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine. Hi, Ingrid.
Hi, thank you very much for such a nice introduction.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. This will be a disappointment to King Charles, won't it?
Well, actually, I don't think it will be, because this sounds crazy, but years and years ago, the very first time I met Prince Charles, we discussed, for some reason I can't remember, we discussed Australia. And he was saying that he felt there were too many royal visits to Australia, and that we really mustn't ever expect them to continue to be part of the crown. And if they wanted to break away and become a republic, that was fine by him. And also, Prince Charles is very into indigenous people, and I think he might be quite pleased by the idea that they were going to, you know, instead of replacing his mother with him, that they were going to replace it with pictures of indigenous people. He would see that as a way forward.
Indeed,
so,
but
that's my opinion. I don't think he will be upset at all. Also, the $5 note with the Queen on is not going to go out of circulation immediately. This is going to take a few years, and you know, anything could happen in a few years' time.
Of course, but, you know, the Queen's great legacy, Ingrid, as you know, was the preservation and indeed the enhancement of and the enlargement of the Commonwealth. It's Charles's job to keep it together. By accepting this decision or even enthusiastically welcoming it, isn't he a turkey that's voting for Christmas?
Well, I think that Charles is actually a very modern thinker. I know we think he's an old fogey, but I think he's a very modern thinker, and I think he realizes that a lot of the Commonwealth countries had sort of said, we might become republics after the Queen has died. And of course, they probably want to support Charles, but I mean, I think he'd completely understand that there was a time for change, and the Commonwealth is very, very much the Queen's baby. And obviously, Charles wants to continue it, but I don't think he's going to be too upset. He wasn't upset about Barbados, for instance. I think he will just go with the flow on this one.
Indeed, although is it potentially evidence, if we see more stories like this, Ingrid, should we brace ourselves for the fact that nobody could replace the Queen, and that he's essentially on a hiding to nothing following Elizabeth, and that the lustre of the monarchy is forever slightly diminished?
Well, I personally don't think that, but I mean, I'm sure, you know, quite a lot of people do. Well, obviously no one can replace the Queen because she had been there for 70 years, so long, and there's no way that Charles is going to be king for anything like that amount of time. So he won't have the same grandeur that the Queen had. He can never have that. But if you look at how he's been received so far, I mean, people seem absolutely delighted by him, and he's coming across as someone that's sort of broken out of his shell, and he looks relaxed, he's getting on with things, he's extremely busy, but this is something he's waited for all his life, and I think he's intelligent enough to realize that along the way the world has changed a lot, so he will just deal with these things as they come and confront him.
Indeed, and counterintuitively, Ingrid, it seems that the King has, if anything, been boosted by the royal soap opera playing out across the pond.
Yes, I think there's been a huge amount of sympathy for him because I think a lot of people understand, parents and sons, they're not children, obviously, but, it's very, very difficult when families have these kind of problems. And Charles is wise enough, as I said before, to know that the minute he says anything, it's just going to exacerbate the situation. So he obviously feels that best thing is to keep quiet, however much it might irritate his younger son. And I'm absolutely certain that Harry will be or has been invited to the coronation because it's a religious ceremony. He's being anointed in the eyes of God. This is not the moment to have a fight with a member of your family or indeed even discuss the matter with a member of your family. Harry either comes or he doesn't. I see it as being very black and white there.
You've observed Charles at close quarters for a long, long time, Ingrid. Do you have the impression he's enjoying the role?
I have the impression he is really enjoying the role, which slightly surprised me. I thought he might find all the everyday munitions of the monarchy a bit tedious because he's so used to going out there, doing his own thing, raising money for his charities. But he seems to be, he seems to really be taking it in his stride, and he really looks as if he's enjoying himself. And, goodness me, he has to have all these receptions and, meetings that he never had to have before. But I think it's something that he's really embraced, I suppose, if that's the right word.
Definitely, and there seems to be a new Fab Four, don't you think, which is Charles and Camilla and William and Kate. They work brilliantly together.
Yes, I think perhaps that's an unlucky phrase, the Fab Four. Let's say that there's a new dignified four. Maybe,
that's
I
brilliant.
don't know. But yes, they do seem to work brilliantly together because it's easier when there's less of you. It is easier to work together.